Today is the anniversary of the day my life ended, and nobody in the world cares, so I'm sharing this story with you. I was riding shotgun with my brother and his best friend when suddenly I heard an explosion, followed by a scream that sounded like a dying animal. I quickly realized the scream was coming from me and then noticed the agonizing pain in my head and left shoulder. I couldn't move my arm at all, and I had no clue what happened, as our car was still driving. Eventually, I managed to open my eyes despite the glass shards in them and saw the massive hole in the windshield right in front of me. I later found out that what happened was some guy decided to drop a massive rock from the bridge above directly onto an oncoming car, and that car just happened to be ours. The rock would have actually hit my head directly if I hadn't been playing Pokemon Go and hadn't been looking to the left. That rock hit me on the left side of my dome, then bounced onto my shoulder. Once I realized what happened, I calmly called 911 for myself, knowing I only had a few minutes left to call my husband and say goodbye before my brain swelled and I passed away right there. I called him immediately after, and he made me promise that I'd still dance in the rain with him. My brother pulled off the highway, and the ambulance met us at the exit. At that point, I started to have what we thought was a seizure. Turns out it wasn't. I was going into shock, which came with violent shaking that resembled convulsions. I remember lying in that seat, seeing the emergency lights flashing and the door opening to reveal several EMTs and a couple of state troopers. Behind them was my husband's face. He looked calm and loving. He's always been my rock. He didn't want my last moments to be seeing his face in panic. I smiled at him and focused really hard on trying not to give in to the shock or lose consciousness. I thought of my best friend of the past 10 years who lived nearby, how everything with him had gone to poop because of his addiction. I thought of my parents. The EMTs were trying to figure out how to move me to the stretcher. Because I had shards all over my neck, they couldn't put a neck brace on me. My neck didn't hurt, so I was fairly confident my neck wasn't broken. I stabilized my own head, looked straight forward, got up, and laid myself down on the stretcher because that was all we could do. My husband stood by in silence, and I looked at him and reassured him everything was going to be fine. Those might have been my last words. When I got into the ambulance, a state trooper had shown up and was photographing me and my horribly messed up shoulder for the investigation, of course. They hadn't caught the person who dropped the rock, and in my crap hole of a city where crime now runs rampant, they never would. After I was strapped in and ready to go, my husband got into the shotgun seat of the ambulance, and I told him to call my parents. My mom didn't answer, so he called my father, who has always been a total piece of crap, who really wouldn't care if I was here or not. He picked up, and my husband handed me the phone through the little window. After I told him what happened, he was just annoyed. It's 11 o'clock at night, and we have to wake up early tomorrow. We can't talk to you now, and Mom is already in bed, he said. I told him there might not be a tomorrow and said I just wanted to talk to my mom. He angrily handed her the phone, and as she complained about it being late, I heard him yelling at her to hurry up in the background. I told my mom exactly what happened but lied through my teeth and reassured her that I was going to be fine. I told her I just wanted to send her the pictures of the crime scene and my injuries. She complained that her phone was plugged in the bathroom and she was already in bed. I eventually got her to look, and her reaction was as if I just told her I got a fish hook through my thumb. She then said, "Okay, I'm going to bed now. I have to be up early in the morning. Rest up." When we got to the ER, it was overfilled with patients. They didn't put a mask on me before wheeling me in. I was going to pass away anyway, so it didn't really matter much. I lay in that bed, my body feeling like it had been run over, for 3 hours. No one washed the glass from my eyes. No one checked on me after the x-rays and CT scans. They refused to give me anything for the pain and finally showed up the last hour with some Tylenol. I think I actually laughed. My husband stayed by my side, calmly talking with me the whole time. I realized in that moment that this was the summary of my life. My husband was the only one there as I lay in what I thought was my final hour, and I had never felt so effing alone. After I was taken to get x-rays and a CT scan, I called my best friend of 9 years, who lived 5 minutes from the hospital. I told him what happened, and he freaked out, asking me if I wanted him to come. How the EFF was I supposed to respond to that? I was like, if you want, you can. He was broke, so I told him we'd call him a lift. Another hour passed by, and he never showed up. My husband texted him after that hour, and he told us he was just getting in the shower. That hit me like a ton of bricks. Somehow, the tests came back, and I hadn't broken anything or gotten any brain damage. No one could possibly understand that, but I wasn't happy. All I had to show for this was huge bruising and soft tissue damage. Before this, I'd suffered almost my whole life with ideation of taking my own life, debilitating PTSD from so many messed up, horrible events in my life, and a failed attempt, as well as several other chronic disabilities, both psychiatric and physical. I was bitter I survived. I knew I'd have to live with what happened for the rest of my life. While to everyone else besides me and my husband, it was just a neat story that they'd forget about in a few days. Another messed up experience for me to relive over and over every day till the day I die. Yay. As I was discharged, I told my best friend over text to not bother coming at that point because I was going home. The next 2 weeks consisted of me laying in my bed in the dark, sleeping mostly, and bawling to myself for the few hours I was awake each day. While I tried to bring publicity to the assaults, I made a petition to try and get the city to put up nets or something, effing anything, because we were all playing Russian roulette, and there had been over 200 assaults just like mine that summer. It was pointless, and it went nowhere. I was just made fun of by hundreds of strangers online. I left the house once to do a requested news interview after my post about the assault went by on Facebook. I ended up being on the news twice and on the radio once for an interview. I had a stranger tell me in a Facebook comment that he was tired of hearing about how all females have trauma and PTSD, that I should stop self-diagnosing myself. I am very much professionally diagnosed, and that the problem was that I was soft and needed to get over what happened because nobody cares. I've been questioned by people about the validity of my story. I've been stopped on the street by locals telling me it doesn't look like my head was hit that hard. My story has been invalidated over and over. I've been asked by my brother's girlfriend if I'm sure I was actually hit in the head and questioned about why it affected me so much since all I got was just a bruise. I was told by hundreds of people how lucky I was that I didn't suffer permanent injuries or die, how I should be grateful. You know, that out of millions of cars, mine had been targeted, and that out of all the places the rock could have landed, it landed directly on my head. No one understands how infuriating it is to be told you're lucky after something like this happens. Nobody understands how insensitive it is to tell a survivor that they're lucky. And guess what? Because they mean the best, all I get to do is swallow the hurt and thank them and be told off for complaining about people trying to be nice. My husband, my high school sweetheart and legal caregiver who I've been with for half my life, stayed so strong for me for so long, which I feel so terrible about. But after about 5 months, he couldn't hold it in anymore and just absolutely broke down for a couple of weeks. He tried so hard to not make it about him, but he's messed up from it too. He drove so fast to meet the ambulance that night because he wanted to see me alive one last time. In the 2 weeks following the incident, I ate a few pieces of meat during one of the days. That's literally it. 1 meal in 2 weeks. I felt that if I left that bed, I wouldn't be safe. Since then, anytime I leave, I'm fully expecting to be suddenly violently assaulted or unalived. My alcoholic ex-bestie couldn't give me a good reason as to why he didn't bother showing up. But after what I found out about him and how bad of a state he really was in before I cut him out of my life for good, I'm not shocked at all. That's a story for another time, but in case he reads this, F you, man. You're literally the worst best friend someone could ask for and a crappy, effing, useless person. I'll add that many months later, he stayed at my house to help me as I was about to be hospitalized for my eating disorder and stole hundreds of dollars, grass, and alcohol from my husband and me to fuel his addiction. That was the last straw before I cut him out for good. My parents never called to ask me if I was okay after that. After a couple of months, my mother freaked the EFF out because I wouldn't fly across the country with 1 day's notice to have her dog put down, regardless of what I was going through, because she couldn't stomach it. I effing lost it when she gave me that call. I told her that she hadn't bothered to come to my state when I was likely passing away at the hospital and that it was absolutely ridiculous that she had the audacity to be ticked off at me for not being able to accommodate a $600 plane ticket to fly out the next day to have her dog put down when I was about to host guests. After she assured me her and my father's reactions were my fault because I sounded so calm on the phone and played the situation down, we went no contact for months following that. Turns out she was diagnosed with a disease that affects her reasoning shortly after, though, so I guess I'm not even allowed to hold it against her, right? She ended up apologizing for her behavior eventually, and I let her back into my life. So after being nearly unalived, I lost my best friend and parents for a while too. My brother has always had issues with empathy. When I told my brother after getting back home that I had a feeling the reality of what happened was going to hit me like a truck the next day and that I'd be sad, he looked at me quizzically and said, "I don't understand why you'd be sad about it. If it were me, it wouldn't really affect me at all." There wasn't even anything I could really say about that. There's no point in trying to explain what I was feeling to someone that couldn't possibly understand. I spent the next year with my eating disorder spiraling out of control, reliving the pain of what happened over and over again. Anytime something fell in the kitchen, I heard or saw glass breaking, or heard a loud, sudden noise. Every time I get in a car, anytime I see a car, anytime I see an overpass or drive under one. It took me months to be able to ride on the freeway again. Every time I leave my island to go to the city, on my way back, I have to drive right under where I almost lost my life. There was no justice for this. The person who almost took my life from me was never caught. Life goes on, and I've lived every day alone in the effing hell that is my head, with my husband as my only support network. Don't even ask me about how therapy went, by the way. That's a whole long other story I'm not going to get into. I look totally fine. I've got some scar tissue on my shoulder that you can't see. I'm the image of a perfectly healthy, beautiful, lucky, and happy woman. Today, I told my mom on the phone that I was sad because it was the anniversary of the day I almost had my life taken from me. She looked at me and said, "It's not an anniversary, because it's not something worth remembering.